Hello and welcome to today's weekly LinkedIn Live Leadership Series, Voices of Leadership. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kathy Eastwood, the host and founder of E equals Y. Each week, we explore the fascinating world of leadership, featuring voices from various generations, industries, and backgrounds. Because a team's job is really to deliver results. The role of the leader is to empower, inspire, and enable the people and team to deliver on those results. And there's actually a repeatable formula to drive that success. And that's the E3 leadership code: express, engage, execute, powered by emotions. However, each leader's approach to applying that is different because there's no one way or right way to lead. And so our live sessions really aim to showcase how different voices of leadership really show up. And we love talking to leaders to understand what drives them, explore their unique leadership styles, core values, and the experiences that have approached their approach, how they've approached it. So before we get this started and I introduce our guest, let's make this very interactive. All right. So feel free to use the chat. Let us know who you are, who you're calling from, and ask questions. Right. We love to see the comments and we will be watching out for them. And let's get started. So I want to introduce our guest today, Alexis Nolan. Thanks for joining me, Alexa. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
Alexis has years of experience in business ops and strategy, most recently serving as chief of staff at Rivian, where she supports the chief software officer in driving key initiatives in vehicle software and enterprise technology. However, just in, I hear there's a change, Alexis, so I'm looking forward to hearing and talking a little bit more about that change from you.
Yep.
And in addition to her role as chief of staff, she's passionate podcast host. Through her podcast, Discover Your Potential, she dives into the minds of leaders and creatives, uncovering their strategies for success and sharing actionable advice. And that's really kind of how we got started. I was on your podcast. It was probably
hmm
about 4 months ago now already.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Excellent. And so since then, we've had fabulous conversations about driving change both personally and professionally, and in our similar roles as chief of staffs. So we're both in the process of writing a book, which we love talking about, and helping others find their full potential. So that's kind of the business intro. Alexis, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yes. Hey, folks. I see. I see my wife in the chat. Hey, Phoebe. I also see Melissa. Good morning from Seattle. Yes, I'm in Seattle. So a little bit about me. I think my kind of just both personally and professionally. I just lead myself with connection, curiosity, and continuous growth. And so as we talk and we go into some of these examples and questions you have, Kathy, I think I'm just going to harp on all three of those themes the whole time. Um, and throughout my whole experience, you'll kind of see specific examples of that. But yeah, I had been with Rivian for a bit over a year with a really cool, fun team, a lot of changes, a lot of new information to me. I was an ad tech for 8 to 9 years, and I totally pivoted and went to something different. I wanted to try automotive, specifically Rivian. And as you mentioned, yes, a recent change. Rivian announced publicly on Wednesday they're going into a joint venture with Volkswagen Group to create Rivian and Volkswagen Technologies. And so my role will be changing a bit, and I'm actually going to be stepping away from the chief of staff type of position and going into more business operations and the employee experience. So you've got this entirely new company. How do you create this culture? How do you get all these people together under one roof, bring them together, align on a mission, align on your values, and build something that's going to, I think, ultimately really change the automotive industry as we look at it. So I'm excited about the new opportunity. And thank you again, Kathy, for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you. So the two names, Rivian and Volkswagen, really conjure up two different cultures. If I pick a word
Yeah.
like that, right? So
hmm
this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah. It's going to be, yeah, it will be. It certainly will be. We've got Volkswagen, who's a brand many people know. They've got many subsidiaries, Porsche, Audi, Bentley. A lot of these I didn't even realize are Volkswagen. They're such a big brand, and they're international. And Rivian is this. new to the newcomer almost, and very tech driven. They focus on software, they focus on technology, they're American made. And so you're bringing these two cultures, as you said, together, and it really makes for an interesting problem to solve, or not even a problem, just an interesting thing to kind of figure out. And
Yeah.
so you actually, right before we joined on this call, you recommended a book to me, The CEO and the Monk. So going to be ordering that really soon, because it talks about a CEO bringing a monk in to really help fix, or to help identify a culture of a new company, right? So I think that's
Yeah.
what I'm going to start with as my
Yeah, no,
task.
and I do recommend it because it's really interesting because the culture is the soul typically of the business, right? And
Yeah.
people are comfortable. That's what their identity is. It's why they get up. Typically, like good cultures are inspiring and empowering your people to show up at their best. And when you're merging, it's two different personalities. You mentioned your wife, and it's kind of similar with my husband as well, right? There's two different personalities coming together and identities, and you have to find the new identity to go
Yeah.
forward, right? As
Yeah.
you come to
Absolutely.
so yeah, because for me, Volkswagen sounds very established, probably a lot more
Hmm.
structure potentially,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
Rivian, I'm assuming, is a little more startup in nature, and but there's positives in both.
They're going to
So
complement each other. We're going to need to find a way where these two things kind of complement each other. I think there's a lot to learn, and I think that's what really drove this joint venture to come to be. So I think there's going to be incredible value in it, and I'm really excited about this kind of new opportunity to take a different spin on my personality. And as I said, one of the words that I have is connection. And so kind of focusing on employee experience allows me to put myself in the shoes of an employee and think about this big organization, this new change. How would I like to operate with folks on a day to day? What do I value? And I just think taking that approach will help at least me and the leaders really formulate a very unique brand new company.
yeah, I love it. So share a little bit more. So you talked about, the connection, the curiosity, your some of your
Mhm,
values. What's your
mhm.
leadership style? How do you typically show up within your teams?
I'm going to throw another C and say coaching. Curious, I'm throwing all these words around, but coaching is more so my style. I don't necessarily think I need to solve the problems for anybody. I think everyone has the ability to kind of solve things themselves, and so I take this coaching approach in the kind of mind frame of I want you to be your best. I want to help find your best. Whatever that may be, if it's in your current thing, if you want something a little bit different, you want a different project or explore a different area, I'm advocating for you to kind of find your potential. I discover your potential, as my podcast states. I really do believe in pushing others to challenge themselves, their own thinking, really understanding their values. So then you can kind of direct yourself and orient yourself in a way that is going to just be more authentic to you. And I think that's what coaches really do. They push you because they know it's good for you. But they're I say pushing, it's kind of an aggressive word, but it's really encouraging. I'm encouraging somebody to be their best version of themselves, regardless of what that looks like. And another kind of word that I think about is advocacy. I want to
Mm.
advocate for you. I want to advocate if you need help, if you want to try something different. So advocacy and coaching, those are my two styles. And I mean, I've only got a couple of years of experience under my belt, actually working cross functionally or even managing teams in my past life. So I have a way to go. So I'm sure, I'm curious to see how my style definitely changes, but that's what I've developed so far.
Yeah, no, and especially I've seen, like, as a chief of staff, because you don't in that role, and even business ops in this new role that you're going to have, you don't have the direct reporting line of all of these
Hmm.
people, but
Hmm.
you have to
Right.
influence all of these people,
Hmm.
with the changes that are happening. And so I think, well, it is one of the reasons why I feel so passionately about understanding your authentic self, you, but then also
Right.
your team members, right? So we typically look at E equals Y, we have the E3 leadership profile to help people who don't know their values, right? So I love that you started out introducing yourself. Here's what I value. This is who I
Mhm.
am. This is where I
Mhm.
start, because
Yeah,
you then can show up authentic, and
absolutely. And yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think if I show up that way, it creates a space for others, whoever I'm working with. It's almost like a vulnerability, and I think that's a critical part when you're getting to know somebody, especially in this type of role where you don't have authority and you have to lead by influence. The moment that I show my vulnerability gives a safe space for the other folks to really kind of show their vulnerabilities to me, and then we can start to kind of work through what their priorities are, their challenges are, and it brings everyone's guard down to be just a little bit more focused on the task at hand, I'd say.
Yeah. And I love the word you used was authentic, as you talking through some of that, because that authenticity people then trust, right? Then
Right.
this whole thing is about building trust at the end of the
Mhm.
day,
Yeah.
when you look at it. So Ralph actually has a question here.
Ooh, okay.
Um, have you been through a merger before? And if so, are there any tips on how you might offer, regarding how to bring different corporate cultures together?
I absolutely have, Ralph. I was at Hulu a handful of years ago, and Hulu was being acquired by the Walt Disney Company. So, a big name, I think, we're familiar with. And again, very similar style, kind of a clash of culture. You've got Hulu, they've built everything in-house, their own ad technology, got a little bit more scrappiness to it. They're new to the entertainment space. They're up and coming with some big shows. And you've got this reputable brand, the Walt Disney Company. They're not just in entertainment, they've got parks, they've got experiences, they have a huge portfolio. And so it's certainly very intimidating coming from, scrappy little Hulu to like, oh no, are we're going to get sucked up into a different culture that's not really relevant to us. And I was so fortunate enough to be in a team that Disney invested in Hulu leadership. So we had our executive vice president of ad platform technology and a lot of his team and some leaders come over from Disney. And what I really appreciate about his style, Jeremy Helfand, shout out to you and your leadership team, but he really took the initiative to establish this is an entirely new company. I want to understand what both parties value. I want to understand what we love about coming to work, what we love about our respective companies, find the common themes of this, and create a culture based around that. And a great example that we did here was we had some workshopping around identifying our values. And once we established our values, we created an employee recognition program where every month peers would nominate each other on those specific values. And so every time we had a town hall, we would show off, the folks and the work that they've done and the value that they were recognized for. And this just fostered a little bit more connection between these two groups. So that's just one example that I can think of. And I'd also say what I really appreciated about that acquisition was how frequently communication was going around. We had a channel of all the employees together, and the leadership team would be engaging. Hey, just woke up this morning to, stroll with my dogs, just wanted to say hi, everybody, and, post your pictures of your dogs, and really just creating an environment where it's safe and it's okay to talk to leadership. And they're just so candid and they're open minded. So I really resonated with that. And I'm taking a lot of those ideas as I think about this new venture with Rivian and Volkswagen.
Excellent. Now I'm going to ask one more question on that. I'm assuming there was a real strong plan of how you would go execute all this, right? It wasn't, hey, how's everyone feeling? Want to make sure that
Yeah.
everyone's feeling good. You also had a plan, right? And for execution.
Yeah, absolutely. You send out some surveys, got some feedback from everybody. You do some workshopping with folks. You get them in a room and you challenge each other. We've got this knot. We're trying to untangle it. So workshopping with the leadership team, bringing everyone in, poking holes at this value. I'm not sure about this word. Is there something else we could do? And it took a lot of thought and a lot of iterations to get the culture to where it was. But I really admired how that team really coordinated to create something amazing over there.
Yeah. And I love, and for the audience, like when I think about this, this goes back to the three leadership code, and I keep bringing it back. But
Hmm.
you just
Hmm.
described, right, expressing what's the end vision. Who are we?
Yeah.
What do we stand for? What are our values? and then engaging people on a regular basis. Heard you use that word. And then executing. There's a plan. We got to make things happen. We got to bring it to life. So there is a repeatable model here that,
Mhm.
that's what drives success, right, for organizations, and making sure you can do that.
Yeah. It ultimately, I mean, once you establish the vision and you communicate that frequently enough, it just reminds people why they're there and that the work that they're doing rolls into that. I think
Yeah.
the more that you can take that big picture, that big theme of a vision and break that down as to here's your team's role in this, here's your individual role into this, the more you get buy-in and the more motivated people are to stay and to collaborate.
Yeah. No, you're reminding me. So I don't know if you can see in my desk, there's a little lion sitting there. That's
Uh-huh.
Eddie, our webkin. So I was at HP, and we were going through a lot of change as well. But there it was an established company, and we had to break down the silos. And so our common theme was we had to align with Eddie, which was a webkin, my nephew's webkin, but it helped make it fun, right? And so it's just having that common theme gets people motivated, gets them
Mhm.
involved and excited. And everything that we're doing, it really is about change. And in so many ways, as leaders, we're trying to get people from point A to point B. And
Mhm.
what gets people excited? And
Yeah,
I love a lot of what you're talking about and your values and bringing to it is that emotional intelligence as well,
right.
right? It's not
Right.
all business.
Yeah. You bring up Eddie, and I actually just finished Satya Nadel's, the CEO of Microsoft's
Yep.
book, Hit Refresh. And in there, he kind of talks about something similar. When his leadership team gets together, they place an empty chair in the room, and that empty chair is the customer of whatever product you're building or thinking about, whether it's, or even the employees. Like if you're, whatever initiative you're talking about in that workshop, there's an empty chair for the person that this is going to impact. And so you're always thinking about that person. So I don't know. I just thought about that as you mentioned Eddie. I think it's a great reminder for leadership teams to kind of put their egos aside and just think about the big picture there.
Yeah. Well, you just said a word, ego. So I want to dig
Mm-hmm.
into that a little bit because we were talking earlier and you shared a little bit about your experiences with leaders. Um, I'm going to kind of go on the negative side first.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you struggle
Yeah.
sometimes, or where do you see leaders struggle? Because you really, if you're going through a merger, you're going through change, you really need to be positive and show up.
Right.
In your experience, have you had any bosses that were not the best, or have you seen leaders that really don't help in a situation like this?
I have been very fortunate where I've had amazing bosses over my career, but I certainly have worked with people who have been leaders to or managers to teams, and I've seen ego at the forefront of their style. And what it looks like is is this is my title and this is how I'm going to carry myself. And it's almost this sense of authority because you have this title. You lead with an authoritarian kind of approach to leadership. And often what I see is a lot of pushback from their teams. It's very hard to get folks motivated. It's very hard to get your tasks done or hit your deliverables because they're not really kind of buying what you're selling. They don't see you as a trustworthy partner, somebody who's going to advocate for them because what they see is really somebody who's advocating for themselves and
Mm,
looking for their own self-interest. So I've seen that plenty of times and it's detrimental and it's unfortunate because I know anybody who's listening, may have had a leader like this, may have had a manager like this, and the manager can ruin your experience at a company. It could be an amazing company. But if you report into somebody who's thinking about themselves and your employees can sense that, if they can sense that you're not advocating for them and you're thinking about your next move, it's detrimental to their experience and it just makes people want to leave ultimately. So yeah, I egos aside, I just you're that's the approach again that I take is let me get vulnerable with you first so we can kind of put all these other things aside. I think leading with that vulnerability, stepping into a room and saying, here's what I value, here's where I might be wrong, really kind of disarms the other person to maybe put their ego away and okay, let's have a conversation here.
So you've had some good experiences, but have you had some leaders along the way that have really guided you and taught you a lot?
I have had a ton of awesome bosses, even just kind of skip level folks that I admire as well. Some that stand out to me just in terms of the qualities that they have. I know I talk about advocating a lot. I talk about building that trust a lot, but it's one thing for, the manager and the employee to have a relationship, but what I also look for is how they have a relationship with their peers and their teams. So if my current manager, for example, she's been with the company for so long. She's incredible. She's worked with different teams and she has a reputation of being somebody to go to solve a problem, of somebody you can count on somebody that, oh, I bet she knows this. I bet she has the answer to this. And if not, she can direct you. And she's in her dependability is what I admire so much about her. And I think of other leaders that I've had in my past who've had those same qualities. There's somebody the leadership team tasks with, okay, we need to do a project. I'm asking you to do so. That's a compliment to the team. I know it sounds like extra work, but it's a compliment that your manager's been tasked to do this because that's a reflection of their work ethic as well.
Yeah, I agree. And Phoebe shared "Dare to Lead" by Brene Brown is an excellent book on some of the topic of what we're talking about, and I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. I assume
Yeah.
that's one that you've read.
Um, I actually don't know. My wife's told me, Phoebe, she's told me to read this book so many times and I just haven't. So sorry, Phoebe. I'll take that up.
She's
I'll read
pushing
that
you
one
to
now.
read it now. No, it
She
is.
is, she is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about knowing yourself and showing up, and it's when you're going through change. I love the fact that you're constantly thinking about the other people, right? And that's something my father taught me as a young kid. He had a phrase, never judge until someone's walked a mile, and you've walked a mile in their shoes. And it's something that has resonated with me throughout my life. And I love that chair, right, of sitting there, like, put yourself in
Mhm,
that seat, because that's exactly the same thing. So one of the things you shared was feedback, right? And how that is really
mhm,
powerful for you, and you embrace that. How do you
mhm,
share that with other people? Like, do you tell people? Like, I know I do, and so I'm just curious if you do this
mhm,
as well. I'm like, I
mhm.
need feedback. Give me feedback, because in a vacuum, I'm going to assume the work. That's just my personality.
Right, right. Feedback for me is, it's almost it's going to sound hypocritical because I love receiving feedback because I want to grow. Always. I'm curious where I can improve. I want to know what my weaknesses are and kind of help tweak those, but I really want to know what my strengths are so I can excel even more so at those. But when it comes to giving feedback, I tend to have this people pleaser personality type. And this is where I know I struggle because my wife, again, I'm bringing her up because I look to her as almost a leader in this regard, that she's very candid. She'll give it back in real time. Her personal, professional life, she's one to speak her mind. And I admire that so much. And I admire anybody who can do that. It takes a lot of courage to do so. I'm of the people pleaser mentality of, and this is what I've had to work on. I say yes to everything. Yes, yes, I'll take this on. Yes, sure, I'll do this. Or there's a disagreement. Okay, maybe you're right. And I've really had to tweak and work on this to take a pause. Let me think about it for a day. Maybe I'll come up with another solution, or maybe I'll kind of change how I give my feedback to you. But it's really taking a moment to, one, maybe think about how you might be wrong, but providing feedback is ultimately how somebody is going to be better. And so I'm trying to improve how I give feedback because that, one, it builds trust between the relationship, and it, two, it just helps create a better relationship with the person that you're giving feedback to. And so I'm actively trying to get better at doing this in real time instead of being a people pleaser, instead of letting things kind of brush under the rug. It's a hard muscle to build, especially for somebody who's been a yes person most of their career. And so I'm curious, maybe this is something you can help coach me on is, what are some tips that you have in giving feedback to somebody? I know candor is great. I know you want to hear it in real time, but everyone has a different style. So how do you recommend?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the first thing that I start with is because you love feedback, think about that and put yourself in the other person's shoes. Most likely they want to have feedback too. People do want to know how they can improve. And so I always look at it as feedback is a gift.
Mm,
And it's funny, we're doing a poll right now to ask why people are struggling with having difficult conversations, and it's
mhm,
fascinating across the board. But when you can build that trust and you're someone that's coming at leadership with that vulnerability, then when people can understand your intent is really good and this I'm here to help you improve, then people are more open. But there
yeah,
are a lot of tips and tricks. One, I ask people, are you open to feedback? Because that immediately, if they're not in the right place, you don't want
mm,
to start.
mhm.
Um,
They're not expecting it, sure.
right. And so they're like, oh, okay. I also start with positive feedback. So getting to know someone, I start
Yeah.
all positive feedback, like, hey, can I give you some feedback? And they're already like, what? And I'm like, I really, the way you approached this project was fantastic. I appreciate it. If you keep doing this, it'll help the project. So then there's a whole
Yeah,
formula behind it.
yeah,
So if you practice with positive feedback, when there's adjusting feedback, people are more open to it because you're coaching on how to do it better and what's the outcome. So yes, I am. This is something I'm very passionate about, and you're now making me think this should be one of our first clinics as
Yeah,
we.
I mean, I think yeah, I mean, even in the comments, I'm seeing some folks, Melissa and Ralph, trying to when you give feedback, I think we often think feedback and we immediately go to constructive, how to get better. I didn't even think about the positive aspect. And that's a critical part of day-to-day leadership style is giving your folks feedback in real time. Thank you for doing this on such short notice, or amazing work getting this project launched. Having this virtual world, we get very caught up in our own problems and our own priorities and everything, but I think it's a refreshing reminder that feedback is not necessarily always a criticism. It's definitely an encouragement. It's a tool where you can motivate folks, keep them happy, and it's something so small as just sending a message. Um, and I'm good at, and I can do that. I can do that piece. It's the harder piece of here's what we could work on. Here's how things can improve that I know myself I struggle with, and that will certainly evolve. And I'll follow your next session. I hope this is the first. Selfishly, I want this to be the first topic so I can get a little more.
Sounds good. Yes. But, I was talking to someone yesterday and we got into, she doesn't like the word feedback. She uses feed forward. And I've heard
Hmm.
that from a lot of different people. And I'm so entrenched with feedback. That's, years and
Hmm.
years. But I really do want to change that to be feed forward
I
because
like
then,
that.
yeah, that might help you feel a little bit better about it.
Mhm,
And,
mhm,
Melissa was saying she's got a similar challenge, right? Giving feedback. But if it's really like, here's how you can do better, right? This is what's it going to look like. And if you do this, this, and this, we're going to succeed this way. Um, the other thing, and I go back to kind of the formula, but expressing what the expectations are. A lot of people think they end up in a feedback situation without having expectations set.
mm,
How do you
okay,
tell someone
mhm,
they're doing a good job or a negative, a bad job, and you haven't set expectations?
yeah, yeah,
It's like, oh, I'm like,
yeah,
why don't you go back to making sure that everyone's on the same page, the roles,
mhm,
responsibilities, the expectations.
mhm.
So it's a good opportunity there. Um,
Yeah, I think about, kind of this again, this cross-functional work that I do. I don't have any authority. I'm not leading a team per se, but you manage relationships. And I mean, a piece of feedback that I have gotten is you need to what is it that you're actually looking for? What is the ask? Um, and therefore, you, again, to your point, you have a benchmark of did we hit it or not, or what could be done better next time. And as a leader, it's your responsibility to really set what that is. Um, what is our target? What's our goal? Um, give somebody something to actually, again, feed forward to, and providing the feed forward in real time, I think is also very important. You don't want to go off the guardrails. I think the sooner that you can come in and be valuable and give some valuable input, the sooner, the individual could be more motivated and have a clear direction. And I think that's great for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And one of our participants shared having one-on-ones is a great way to set that platform for having those conversations, right? So I agree with
Yep.
you there. There is just in time when something happens. Typically, if you can explain the example at that point, it's great. But having one-on-one set up regularly gives you that platform, which is a basic that I think everyone is doing, but not everyone does. And that's a simple tool for managers as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also just it's so everyone's got a different personality. And so, the one-on-one sessions just allow you to kind of switch your approach in providing the feed forward, specific to the individual. I do say that I do like the idea of providing positive feed forward in group settings, and one-on-one settings, and then anything that's just a little bit more of, how we can do this better next time, how we can improve. You certainly want to save those for the one-on-one conversations.
Absolutely. So, believe it or not, we're up at the half hour already. This
Always flies by. It always flies by with you, Kathy. It always does.
It does, absolutely. So, for our audience, you've given us a ton of great tips and tricks, but if you had one piece of advice to give people that are coming in and really trying
Mhm.
to drive change, what would it be, for a new manager?
Good question. I'd say to be very be curious. It's gonna be two parts. Be curious and listen. I think the first thing, this is actually a piece of advice I got yesterday, which is to step into a new situation and do a lot of listening. Get your feet on the ground. Where do we see most of the pain points? Where are the opportunities? Get to know each individual. Again, I go back to what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What motivates them? And listen to that. And once you're able to get a picture of everybody in the situation, you can start to put together some themes, and you can start to propose, some new solutions or some new initiatives, new ideas, etc. But don't come in hot. Don't come in with your ego of, I think I know this and I know how to do this. Let me implement my way. Come in and listen, build some trust, come up with some good ideas that resonate with all the feedback that you've gotten. So that's a great piece of feedback that I stole. So I'm gonna take that one. I love that.
I love it. As we're talking, what's coming and landing with me, and it's something I believe so strongly on, is awareness, right? That
Yeah.
is a superpower for leaders, knowing yourself and being able to show up authentically as you've shared, right? And being vulnerable, but then also listening and observing. There's a ton that you can capture by just listening
Yeah.
and letting other people talk. Other people like to talk. So you
They
can,
do. They do, and that's good. You wanna get some valuable information as a manager, but you have to put your self-interests aside. You're leading a team now, and it's you've gotta hear to make change.
yep. Absolutely. Well, let's thank I could go on and on, but I think we'll
Right.
have you back after you get started on your new role.
Yeah,
Wish you
absolutely.
all the best on that. And for the audience, thank you for joining us. We've got lots of good feedback. If we missed one of your questions, we'll go back in the comments. This will be available for others to watch. But we hope that you will continue to follow us. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, we'll put the link in there as well. But thank you all. Thank you, Alexis, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kathy.
If you want
Appreciate
to
it. You
stay
too.
on, I'll see you on the other side.
Sounds
Thanks.
good.